As the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair as we raise our voice in solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home, 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 home. And I am so grateful to be here and to be here in America. It's my pleasure to introduce the Healing Light Festival and why you're all here today. It's for this beautiful healing energy. It's Healing Light Festival, healing because you are going to, when you walk out of here, you know that you have been blasted with the most beautiful healing light energy. And it's going to basically hit your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual self. Light, because Gene is going to give you all the light that he can muster up today here in this room. That he's really a vehicle for the universal love and light energy here. And you're going to see it in many forms. It's going to be through his hands, through his eyes, through just being in this room. And of course, you guys are all bringing in the light, and we really appreciate you doing that for us today. And festival, because it's going to be a joy today. This is really going to be a fun experience for you. I know a lot of healing it takes a lot of energy in people to go from one stage of maybe ill health to healing, but this is really a joyous occasion. This is a joy to be connected to this, to be part of it, to be in this room. So let's really feel that joy of the festival, the celebration. And right now I'd like to introduce to you one of our organizers for the Conscious Life Expo, and a beautiful woman I just met today, Shima Moore. And isn't that a pretty name? Yeah. So let's introduce Shima.
Thank you so much. I just want to welcome you all here this morning and to the expo, to let you know that you're in for a wonderful day. And this morning, you're going to have an extended opportunity to experience Egidio, who has been Praise is a gifted healer, the major networks, and I know the producer of the event, Robert Quicksilver, when he came across Gene, he said, "He's the real thing." And I know that really means a lot to him and to me, because I know the lineage that he comes from, and for him to acknowledge Gene was very special to me. So I just really wanted to welcome you all here to Conscious Life this morning, and to this festival of life, of light, and to this festival of consciousness here. And I want to thank you all for coming, making the effort to be here, because without you, we're not here. So thank you very, very much. And have a wonderful, wonderful morning with Jean Egidio, and a wonderful day at the expo. Thank you so much.
I'm going to introduce Annette, who's going to give us a demonstration about the power of our consciousness and our mind. So Annette?
Okay. I don't know, the concept of energy healing to some of you is new, and to some of you it's old hat. But for those of you who are new, just kind of bear with, bear with me. But the old paradigm was that we were mechanical beings, and we kind of cut it out and put in something new, or we paint it over, or we put it in a pill. But the new paradigm of healing is that basically science has shown that we're energy beings, and everything happens first in our energy field, and then it's brought into the physical, into our bodies. And so Jean is kind of one of those people who works on the energy. And think of yourself, I want to give you a new thought of yourself. I want you to think as an energy bank, and you get 100 units of energy in you a day. And how you spend it is up to you. And the way we spend it in the things we do, our thoughts. Sometimes we spend it on, our childhood and the cupcakes and brownies we didn't get. Or sometimes we spend it on, wounds that we've had from relationships or deaths. So we spend our energy in a lot of ways. And when we go into energy debt, we get sick, okay? And so Gene does a lot of things, and one of the things he does, he can redistribute your energy, because sometimes if energy's stuck here or stuck there, we also get sick, because then part of us is starved and we got too much energy or too little. So Gene can redistribute the energy. But he's better than a bank. He can, when your business runs into debt, you go to the bank and get a loan, right? Gene's kind of like a bank, but he's better than a bank. He has an infinite source of energy. And he's a grant. So you come to him and he gives you your body energy, and your body's going to spend it. And just like a loan that you get for your business, you can go to the bank and get a big loan for your business, and you can go to Vegas and spend it on nothing. Not that it's nothing. I mean, a lot of people think it's something. Or you can spend it on your business. So if you take the energy from Gene and then you go off and spend it on all sorts of stuff, then you're not going to be, you need to take it. So you have to participate too. And I want to get you an idea of how much your thoughts, how much energy are in your thoughts, because we don't realize that. We kind of thought we could think anything we want, and it doesn't cost us. But your thoughts cost you, and they cost you a lot. Okay, so can I have a volunteer up here? Okay. A little closer? Can you? This better? Okay. Let's see. I'm going to... You've done muscle testing? Yes. Well, this isn't muscle testing. It's really energy testing. Because it's not... Okay, just so when I press down, you press up. Okay. Now, I want you to hold in your thoughts something you don't like that really bothers you, that pisses you off.
Okay.
Excuse me. Okay, I want you to hold that. Okay, hold that in your mind, and then I want you to resist, okay? Woo! Hold it again in your mind and try to resist. Now try to resist. Okay, I want you to see that when you're holding something, either anger or something that you don't like, it is costing your body energy. And if you hold those thoughts there long enough, because you have to, if she has to perform her work and she's holding all these negative thoughts, her, if she doesn't have enough energy to do it, is going to go to her cell tissue to borrow the energy to support all that. Okay? So I want you to think of something that makes you really happy. Okay, and really, okay, now resist. Okay, do you see the difference? You cannot afford a negative thought. It's bad enough that whoever did whatever they did to you, did it to you. But every time you think about it, and every time you give that bad thought energy, you are losing energy. And I think you have to decide where you want to spend your money. Do you want to give more money to that thing that happened a long time ago? You need to call your spirit back. You need to call your energy back. And one of the ways we call our energy back is by forgiveness. Okay? And forgiveness works because it disconnects whatever you're sending that energy, and wherever your emotions are, your energy is. So remember, where you want to spend your energy is that where you want it. And where the most powerful time is now, because there really is no past, present, or future. So if you keep your thoughts more in the now rather than past or future, you really have more power. Okay? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. What?
I've got my own mic.
You got, oh, okay.
Well, good morning, you lovely people this morning. Good morning. I want to welcome you as well to the Expo and to the Healing Light Festival. We've been doing the Healing Light Festival now for more years than I want to talk about. But the question I get asked the most is, Gene, how did you get started and what you're doing? And as a child, 5 years old, I lived in a two-family house. And every morning I would climb up the stairs on all fours. And there was this old Italian man up there, and he would peel an apple without breaking the skin. And it would fascinate me. I would sit there and just watch it. The good news is that we ate the apple after he peeled it. But he was peeling the apple, and the knife slipped and went right into his thumb and cut right to the bone. And as a child, without thinking, I just grabbed his thumb. So after learning a couple of new words in Italian, he shook me loose. And there was nothing but a red ring around his thumb. No blood, no cut, no nothing. And with that, he dragged me downstairs to my parents and started relating what happened. And my parents shoved it off and said, John, you had too much wine. It's too early in the morning. So that passed by. And then the phone would ring, and I'd sit there and I'd say, that's going to be Aunt so-and-so who just had a heart attack and so forth and so on and this and that. And my parents started getting very worried about, I guess you could say, my psychic ability at that time. So they took me to the parish priest and related what was going on, that, Gene looks at somebody and says, geez, look at the blue around them, the red and the green. And he sees colors around people. Today we call it auras. In those days it was colors. And the priest says he needs help. He needs an exorcism because the devil is in him. So as you could see, I had two of them and it didn't do any good. And then it went on that way. A relative would come over and I would put my head on her lap, and she had bursitis, rheumatism bad. She would get up and no pain, no problems, no nothing. And on and on. And my parents got concerned again. And they took me to this doctor, quote unquote, who was a psychiatrist. And the doctor says, he does need help. And I got committed to an institution for a year, getting shock treatments once a week. And I was a new person. You have to excuse me, I get a little emotional when I tell this story. I was a new person every week. And after a year, I got released. I came home and I literally had to be trained to be a human being again. From the most obvious things, going to the toilet to putting on a pair of socks. And I went through life that way, and about 14 years old, my parents says, we're going to give you a real treat. We're going to send you to camp. And I used to live in New York, Yonkers, New York. We're going to send you to Jersey, which was the country at that time, you know. So I went to Hackensack, New Jersey to camp. And during the camp period, I kept feeling a pain in my side. And I told the counselor that I wasn't feeling too well. And he says, oh, you know, stuff it. Let's get, you know, be a man. So after I collapsed, and they took me to the hospital, and they found out I had appendicitis that ruptured. And I was operated on. I passed over. It was a nice trip. I explained that in my book. That's a commercial. And about 2 weeks later, I ended up with peritonitis. And I was back on the operating table again, and I passed over again. And I came back. I guess they didn't want me up there. They says, get back out of here. I came back, and normal childhood at that time. Came the Korean War. I went into the Navy. Came home, married on the street, had 4 lovely children. And all that time, throughout my whole life, my childhood, I don't want to say it was a voice or a hearing or something like that, but you don't belong here. This isn't where you should be. You don't belong here. And I kept getting that feeling no matter what I was doing, no matter what business I was in or what, or where I was living. So finally, we picked up stakes and we moved to California. And without doubt, my life just fell apart. To give you an idea, on a Monday, my divorce became final. On a Tuesday, my partner ran away with all the company money. On a Wednesday, I was in a head-on collision. On a Thursday, I left real estate I was holding because of the financial situation. Actually, I didn't make any plans for the weekend, you know. So this is what was going on in my life. And I was at home. I couldn't get a job in McDonald's. And I held at that time 2 electrical licenses. And I got a phone call from this lady. She says, Gene, I had a dream about you last night. I said, honey, that's what I need now is a good dream. She says, yeah, I dreamt that you healed me. I says, what? At that time, I was originally Archie Bunker. If it wasn't there, it didn't exist. She says, yeah, I dreamt that you healed me. I says, oh, that's nice. She says, can I come over and talk to you about it? I says, sure. I'm ready to hang up the phone. I says, what did I heal you from? She says, oh, I have herpes. I said, oh, that's what the universe is going to bring in next to my front door, right? That's all I needed, right? So after about 5 or 10 minutes, I had the good sense to lock the front door. There was a knock at the door. And here's this lady, about mid-30s, long black hair, very attractive lady. The only problem was she was covered from head to toe with these lesions. And I says, come on in. And I pulled out a chair and I says, sit here. Because I was going to sit on the other side of the kitchen table. And I found myself sitting as close as you two folks are. And I says, geez, this is funny. And she started to cry. And I said, what's wrong? She says, Gene, this is where I was sitting in my dream. So I figured she was puffing, you know. So I didn't pay that much attention to it. So then she said, yes, this is where I was sitting in my dream, and everything you've said and everything I've said was in my dream. And I looked over at her, and all of a sudden her head is in her chest, and she eyes are closed. And I said, she's sleeping. And then all of a sudden, for some reason or other, I put my hand on her shoulder, and I went to remove it, and I pulled her halfway off the chair. My hand was affixed, glued. I'm still waiting for an answer on that one. And I literally had to lift her back up onto the chair. And I'm sitting there saying, geez, I feel very foolish sitting here. This lady sounded, got my hand on her shoulder. And I tried it again. I pulled her halfway off the chair again, put her back on. And I sat there for the longest time saying, what's wrong with this picture? And I said, I know what's wrong. I bought the funny farm. I flipped out. So I sat there and accepted the fact that she was out and I was sitting there. Then all of a sudden, maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes goes by, and down goes the arm and up comes her head. And she looks at me and she says, Gene, I feel pretty good. I said, that's nice, you know, what was I going to say? And she says, yeah, I feel really good. And she got up, out the door she went. And I says, what a way to start a morning off. So about 20 minutes goes by and there's a knock at the door. And I said, uh-oh, here they come to take me away with the jacket that ties in the front, you know? So ironically, I went to the door. I was ready to go with whoever was there. Ironically, it was the guy from the water company to turn off my water because I couldn't pay my water bill. But he was nice enough to let me fill up my bathtub with water. And then about, an hour later, another knock at the door, and I says, they finally got here. And who was it but the guy from the electric company turned off the electricity because I couldn't pay my electric bill. So I says, this isn't my day. So I got on the phone. I was trying to get some work. No way. The afternoon went by. The evening went by. And the next morning, the phone rang, which was the only thing working in the house. And who was it but this lady that I had my hand on her shoulder the next day. And talking about being upset, she was crying, screaming. I said, oh, my God, what is she going to say I did? That's the first thing that entered my mind. So finally, I get her quieted down. And I says, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she took a deep breath. And she says, Gene, there isn't a mark on my body. And I says, that's great. Go see your doctor right away. Like he or she could do something about it. Then come and see me because I figured she was still puffing away, you know. So later on that afternoon, she showed up at my front door again, as clean as your shirt, your blouse, your dress, not a mark on it. And today I realized I had to see that to be sitting here today, to believe in what was going on. And that's just one of many, many stories. After she left, I locked the doors, the windows, the garage door. I figured I'm going to lock it outside, you know. And I sat in my favorite chair and looking at the TV. It wouldn't work because I had no electricity. And I went to sleep. I went to sleep. Then I went to sleep. I could account for being in that chair for 3 days without getting up for nothing whatsoever. The third day I woke up and I looked over and there was my car keys on the coffee table. As I went to pick them up, I looked out the window and I had a beautiful avocado tree in the backyard. The avocados were like that. And I could feel the roots of that tree going into the ground. I could feel the veins going into the leaves. I could feel the breeze without wind. And I still have that feeling today. Picked up my car keys, got in the car, and I didn't drive away. I unchained the car because they were trying to repossess it. And I left everything there. I left my clothes, the pots, the pans, the photos, like it wasn't belonging to me anymore. I just left the house there. And I drove over to my sister's. I told her I needed someplace to stay. And thank God for sisters. She said, you could stay here as long as you want. So foolishly enough, I tried to get my business back together again. I was an electrical contractor. And everything I would touch would go down the tubes. Nothing would work out. Finally, one night I was at a party with a lady, and we were having a great time. And she looked at me and she says, Gene, take me home right away. My head got such a headache, my eyes are crossing. I put my hand on her head. I said to myself, what are you putting your hand on her head for? And she looked at me and says, what did you do? And everybody in the room turned around and looked at me. I says, nothing. She says, I have no more headache. So all of a sudden, somebody over there says, geez, my leg. I have a problem with my leg. Somebody at my back. Next thing you know, I had a line of people there, and I was working on them. And that's how I reconnected again from that childhood experience. And today I have 2 healing centers, one in Escondido, one in Santa Monica. And as I was explaining this morning to this young lady here, that I'm looking to open up an international healing center where people can come and stay and be worked on, treated with various modalities as well as what I do. And this is just part and parcel of what I do. If I'm not sitting in an expo, I'm traveling around the world or in one of my healing centers. There are numerous stories. And you need to look at the humorous part of the numerous stories. I do phone healings on Tuesdays. And this one fella called me from Chicago. And he says, Gene, I have a hernia. Can you work on it? And I said, well, let's see what develops. And I worked on him. I went to the next person. And about, I'd say maybe a month later, I get a letter from him saying, I'm the fella you worked on with the hernia and everything is fine, but I need to relate something to you because it's really, really important that I tell you this. So I called him up, and he says, the day you did the phone healing on me, that afternoon, my wife was scheduled for a cataract surgery. So I took her to the hospital, and I was in the waiting room waiting for her to come back out. And the doctor came up to me and says, what is going on here? Why bring her to me? He said, because you told me to bring her. You're the doctor. He says, well, there's nothing wrong with her eyes. And so I went in the room, and I said to my wife, his wife, he says, honey, what's going on? And he says, she put her head in her chest, and she said, when you were getting your phone healing, I was on the extension. So you never know. I wish I could say, hey, you blonde head and brown hair or whatever, tomorrow at 3 o'clock you're going to be healed. I'd be giving you a big story. What we can do is do as much as we can. And we can start by healing the emotions as well as the spiritual as well as the physical. It works on all levels. I was on a night train from Moscow to Leningrad. We're at St. Peter's today. And this guy showed up in the cabin, and he started in Russian. That's my bunk up there, and my translator says to me, Gene, don't get excited because In Russia, we all travel together, we all share, nobody disrobes, so everything is fine. And he says, and as I looked at him, his face was as clean shaven as you fellas. There wasn't a mark on his face, but I could feel there was something wrong with his face. So I asked my translator, this conversation goes through translators, what's wrong with the left side of his face? And after a while, after she explained to him what I do, he opened his mouth. He showed a gaping hole in his gum line. He was caught in Chernobyl, and he had radiation poisoning, and he had cancer. So I asked if I could work with him. So I'm standing on the two bottom bunks, and he was in the top bunk, and the train started going. It was like a karate match trying to keep my hand in there. And maybe 15, 20 minutes went by, and I came down, and I got in my bunk, and I went to sleep. A couple hours later, I woke up to somebody crying profusely. And I looked over, and my traveling companion was out like a light. And I look up, and there's this Russian guy sitting cross-legged in his bunk, just crying. And I look over, my translator's crying. I said, hey, what's going on here? And she says, oh, no, don't get excited. He said something that touched my heart, and it started me crying. I said, well, what did he say? She said that he woke up in the start, and he realized he had no pain in his face. And he went to stick his tongue in the hole, and there was no hole there. It was like it was sewed up. And then he said something that really touched me. He says, I've been a communist for 47 years. And today I know there's a God. So that whole trip, if nothing else happened, it was well worth that. But as I say, there was thousands of stories. I'd work on about 2,500 people a day. We'd line them up in a circle, and I'd walk around the circle. And we'd have chairs where people who couldn't stand would sit there. And I went by the chairs, and there's this cute little girl, maybe 5 years old at the most, sitting on her mother's lap with the bows on and everything. And I just felt the need to pet her on the head. And when I did, she grabbed my pinky, lurched back. She slid off her mother's lap and stood there looking up at me. And I said to her, come on, let's walk around the circle. Like she understood English, right? So we went around the circle there, and we came back, and her mother is crying. So I'm apologizing. I'm sorry I took your daughter and this and that, and I don't mean to be, forward and blah, 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 blah. And my translator said, that's not what she's crying about. I said, what is she crying about? She said, that's the first time that child could walk. And then all of a sudden, I felt this movement in my pocket, and I looked down, and this little girl took my last Tootsie Roll. So how do you know, right? It is thousands of stories. I could sit here all day and just tell you stories. But I know Michelle would like to sing another song for us. And that would give me a chance to take a breather. Michelle.
Life's been a mystery to me. Living in this body, then trying to be free. Never got it figured out how to change my destiny till I finally met you, and then I became a we. And now I see we're perfect just the way we are, living day to day in loving. Oh, and I forgive myself for thinking that I wasn't quite enough. We're perfect just the way we are. Oh, and every day I see a little clearer as my heart becomes more open to the truth. Every moment in itself is dear, leading me to be who I already am. We're perfect just the way we are, living day to day in loving. And I forgive myself for thinking that I wasn't quite enough. We're perfect just the way we are. Oh, and every day I see a little clearer as my heart becomes more open to the truth. Every moment in itself is dear, leading me to be who I already am. We're perfect just the way we are, living day to day in loving. Oh, and I forgive myself for thinking that I wasn't quite enough. We're perfect just the way we are, just the way we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That was beautiful. We're going to do a little absentee healing. And how we do this is that if you have somebody that you want to send energy to, what I'd like you to do is just raise your hand, and when I point to you, their first name. And a quick little story about that is we were doing this, I think it was Beverly Hills at one time. And what happened was this fella in the back of the room raised his hand, and he gave out a woman's name. And about 2 days later, he calls me up, and I don't want to identify him because he's a very famous author. And he says, Gene, you know, when you were doing the absentee healing, I gave you my mother's name. And I called her, and she got out of a sick bed of 7 years right after that. And I said, well, that's great. I'm really happy to hear it. He says, but what you don't understand, we were in Beverly Hills, and my mother lives in England. So there's no barrier. There's no barriers as far as energy is concerned. So what I'd like you to do is, if you have somebody you want to send some energy, just raise your hand.
George, Grace, Jennifer. Sophia.
Awesome. Camila.
Michaela. And
Kevin.
Lila.
Callista. Alan. Hillary. Melly. Rachel.
Jerry.
Ron. Karen.
Did I miss anybody? Because the light is hitting me, so I can't.
Doris. Debbie.
Anybody else? Okay. Okay. You're going to experience 3 types of healing here this evening, this afternoon, or this morning, or whatever it is. One is going to be hands-on healing, which each and every one of you will come up here and we'll work on each and every one of you. And you're going to experience just what you just experienced, the absentee healing. And then you're going to experience the open eye meditation healing. So if Michelle's going to tell me what we're going to do next, we'll be all right. Okay, we're going to do the laying on the hands healing. And what we'll do from the rear, and we'll file down the middle aisle, come up this way, and just watch the wires, folks, because there's wires all over the place, all right?
I didn't make that very clear.
As you come through, come front here, all the way across, then come down, and there's an opening, so you can go through that way. Okay, so